It always does that. Happy Boxing Day, everybody. And it's especially appropriate that it's Boxing Day because we're talking about a movie starring Sylvester Stallone. But it's not that kind of Boxing Day. For those of you that don't know, Boxing Day is the holiday traditionally the day after Christmas in the UK and Australia. Do they celebrate it in Canada as well?
Don't know.
Oh, all right. Well, that's a hole in my cultural trivia. I'll have to figure that out. Welcome, everybody, to War Stories. Glad to have everybody back. And we promise that in 2023, the first episode of War Stories for that will have MasterSun42 in the intro sequence. He has passed his probationary period, and he is. And I do find it really funny that this was the film that we all landed on. For those of you in the chat who don't know, and I don't know if Tony knows this either, but I believe this is the first, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first World War II movie that we have done with MasterSun42. And I find that poignant because for those of you that don't know, I understand why MasterSun has kind of put off the World War II thing for a while, because you may not be aware of this, but MasterSun was in World War II.
Oh, here we go.
He's like, I think he's going to tell you that he's like 45. But if you actually look up his birth certificate, he's like officially like 70, but really he's like 98 because the man doesn't age.
Every year I get another 10 years from you.
I'm convinced he was frozen. Okay. So here he is. And I'm sure this is going to hit close to home for him. But I appreciate you taking the time to do a World War II movie with us. I know that's tough.
I'll try not to have any flashbacks of when I was in the WW2.
All right. It is also really helpful that MasterSun42 is a football expert.
I am a football expert, but we're going to talk about soccer today, Tony, and not football. So if you want to talk about football later, we can, but we're going to talk about soccer today.
So you're playing the Stallone character. I got it right.
I mean, I do think that is a beautiful parallel that we have the British military guy who's here to represent this movie, and then we've got the American military guy who has sort of a love for this film, I believe, which, you know, but he may be in the minority opinion in the chat. I don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen, everybody. Anything could happen.
No. Are we going to do a chat trivia? Is it called football or soccer?
It all depends. The minority opinion all depends on how many Americans versus Brits are in the chat tonight.
Yeah, that's probably a good.
So, like Stallone, you, sir, may be the lone American discussing this against Tony and the chat. Are you prepared?
I am ready.
Okay.
I am beyond ready, and I have special surprise waiting for Tony in case he gets out of hand with this.
What do the characters in the film call it?
You know what? It doesn't matter what they call it. They were trying to appeal to these smaller countries to make them feel at home, to bring them into this American film. And before you say, well, this was shot, it's a UK film. If there is one American in the film, it is an American film. It's the rules. I didn't make them up. That's just the way it is.
Oh my God. Oh, man.
Wow.
Brian Dillingham, thank you for the Dillinghamism. He says, can't stay. Have a good live stream. Whatever you're doing, Brian, I hope you have a good time, sir. Jason Anderson says, drive by Dillinghamism. All right. Okay, so let's get started then. For those of you that aren't aware of what this movie is, it's a 1981 film by director John Huston, whose career was, needless to say, illustrious. And he was in the twilight of his career at this point. Those of you in our generation might better know him as the voice of Gandalf in the animated Hobbit special from Rankin Bass. But John Huston, for you more film learned or classic film enthusiasts know, he goes all the way back to the Maltese Falcon. So this is an accomplished director, and he wanted to do a film about a now I don't want to call it controversial, but a now quite argued bit of World War II history. At the time that he did this, there was a widely held, believed story that the Germans during World War II challenged a number of Ukrainians to a soccer match. And after it was over and the Ukrainians beat them, the Germans sent them back to a labor camp and then shot 5 of them within a week. That information was considered correct at the time that this movie was being developed. Within, I guess, recent years, they have determined that a lot of that may not actually be true at all. That the soccer match, the football match, had very little to do with the coincidental deaths far later of some of the players in labor camps. But that's what it's based around. And there was even a 1962 or 1963 adaptation of that event on film. John Hughes has decided to take that and turn it into something far more fictionalized by focusing on making the Ukrainians largely British, and then pulling in a lot of tropes from The Great Escape and then tying it through football. So what do you guys think about that whole thing of the film? The film was arguably more historically relevant 40 years ago than it may arguably be now.
Well, first of all, real quick, before the chat jumps over you, Michael misspoke. He is well aware that the director is John Huston and not John Hughes. There's a big difference there.
Did I say John Hughes?
Yeah.
No, I said the Maltese Falcon. So
everybody makes mistakes, even the great Michael.
I make mistakes all the time. So guys, I thought I said John Huston in my head. I really did.
You did the first time, and then the second time you said John Hughes. And just before anyone jumps in the chat, guys, when you're live and you're doing this live, those things just happen.
Right.
The amount of times I've made a Stan Solo video unscripted, and I've had to go back and reshoot it because I keep saying Smith Lord Creations instead of Stan Solo. Mm-hmm. It's so
yeah. I appreciate you calling that out, Tony, because I heard my first reference. I did not realize I misspoke on the second one. So, but anyway, still better than that guy from CNN who attributed John Hughes as the director of The Searchers. So there we go. Yeah, I'm just having a senior moment. Unlike MasterSun42, age actually affects me. So
Jennifer Lawrence was the first female action star. So
that's true.
Yeah, that's true. That's fact.
Mm-hmm.
It's fact.
So we'll ride right past my slip of the tongue there. All right. So the other thing I want to address before we get started with the discussion of the plot of this film, wait, no, I need to let my question lie first. What do you guys think of this film to audiences being more historically relevant at the time they saw it and thought it was than it is now?
I think the film stands up on its own of being what kind of film it is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily, how many times have we seen films that are based on a true story and it's like 10% of a true story? So I don't think it necessarily takes too much away from it, because it's not like they were trying to do an exact of what that story was. They took that and they just used it as a basis to create what they have now. So I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think the filmmakers they drew a tiny bit of inspiration from this somewhat true story. Mm-hmm. This is an English fantasy film. It's like after the Second World War, obviously football is the biggest sport in the world, Clemens.
Yes, it is. It's very much. My 49ers are my favorite team.
And obviously it's the number one sport in the United Kingdom. So following on from the Second World War, England won the World Cup in 1966 against Germany. You know, and it's one of the great kind of the proudest sporting moments in English history. This was a fantasy wish fulfillment film where we could, because we've never won the World Cup since. Like, everyone thought we were going to win it this year. We didn't get past the quarterfinals. You know, England always seemed to let us down on the sporting field. So this was a wish fulfillment exercise, and that's why it's a real guilty pleasure, not only for me, but for a lot of my fellow Englishmen.
Gotcha. Well, as we've said many times on War Stories, we're not here to only do historically accurate films. We're here to also do things like Where Eagles Dare and Hell in the Pacific and things like that. It's just in this particular case, before we got started talking about the plot, I wanted to establish that at the time this film was made, people thought it was closer to a historical event than we now believe it is. So just letting everybody know. Michael Hinkson, thank you for the super chat. He says, football is the American game where the foot is used only for kickoffs, extra points, and field goals. Football, soccer, is where you use only your foot or your head or your chest or Pele.
Yeah.
Speaking of Pele, I want everybody, you know, if you're that type of person, shouts out and get your prayers. He had cancer. It's pretty bad. They have him at an end of life facility. And just recently, yesterday, his family gathered around. Don't know if they just gathered around because it was Christmas or if they're gathering around because he's getting pretty close. But it's I believe he's 82 or 83 years old.
Wow. Well, I guess that would make sense given that this film is 41 years, almost 42 years old now, and so he was already a known entity.
Yeah, he had retired already.
Yep.
Before this film had started.
Yep. So the other thing I want to bring up is because of its wide appeal internationally, and that it was done. It was a American, British, I believe Italian co-production. It ended up being distributed by Lorimar, the same people who did they distributed the Last Starfighter and The Big Red One. This film was retitled for overseas. In Britain and other places, it was called Escape to Victory, which is why the title of this War Stories episode is called Escape to Victory, because it was Escape to Victory, I believe, in more markets than it was simply called Victory. So we wanted to just throw that out there as well. I also love how they turned the swastika under the eagle into a soccer ball.
Soccer ball.
Yeah.
That's a really good poster.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that until you just said it.
Yeah. I wish I had a red tail hawk sound effect that I could just throw in there. Okay, so we begin the film with an attempted escape out of a prison POW camp at night. It's shot very much like The Great Escape, which mastered that. That's not a criticism. It's just more of an observation. He gets to the wire, and they catch him, and he tries to hold his hands up, show he's unarmed, even though the spotlight's on him. And of course, they shoot him, they kill him. Which then leads to some more Great Escapee opening. Clearly, John Huston, I know who he is. I'm tired. It's the end of the year. John Huston, who must have known John Sturges. I'm sure. In fact, I know he knew John Sturges, who directed The Great Escape, and that was a huge hit in the early 60s. Decides to borrow from the best. And so there's this, I'm going to show you a few bits from the intro here that mirror in sequences from The Great Escape. At the same time, the title card is shown over a number of Heinkel 111 bombers in formation. This film is one of many films that wisely dipped into the Battle of Britain movie film archive, because they shot hundreds and hundreds of hours of the airplanes for Battle of Britain. And then afterwards, it was almost, even to this day, a sub-industry of licensing out the trims from that footage to other productions. And even to this day, other movies still rent or license the Battle of Britain film library to put airplanes in their World War II movies and stuff. It's fascinating. So here we go. That whole bit minus the airplanes, I just wanted to show the airplanes to show the Battle of Britain footage being used. That whole bit with the cars coming up and the march and everything like that, headed to the POW camp, and then the master shot of the POW camp is a beat for beat nod to The Great Escape as it established the prison camp in the beginning of that film. The thing I love is that I don't have any proof of this. I just kind of was watching it, was like, I bet you. I tried to find out where they built the camp for this film. I could not find filming locations to be that specific. I know they filmed some of this movie in Hungary. I assume that's where they built the prison camp set.
Yep.
Okay. But I love the fact that it appears, again, this is just my take on it, directors can be very competitive. It appears that John Huston wanted to let everybody know, hey, I had a budget for this movie too. Look how much bigger my prison camp is than the Great Escape prison camp. Huh? Helicopter shot? Nice. That's very nice, yeah. So he pulls back and shows you the much bigger prison camp, which is impressive. You know, it's got the...
It is a very impressive set, yeah.
Yeah.
I read somewhere it said it took them like 3 months to create that prison.
Really? So they didn't use a pre-existing location.
No.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that is really impressive then, because they've literally gone, you know how The Great Escape rebuilt part of Stalag Luft 3?
Yeah.
We're going to rebuild the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we're only going to show it in one helicopter shot.
Yeah.
Good stuff. The Germans are bringing in a Red Cross investigation contingent to determine the situation around the prisoner who was killed, and they are also
real quick, which is a plot point that's introduced right at the beginning and then never goes anywhere.
Yeah,
right. Yep, it's just a pretext to get a German to notice them playing football. That's the pretext. Yeah,
there's lots of little what you think is the beginning of a plot thread. There's lots of those little threads throughout this film that you start pulling on and then go, oh. It's just the thread came out and that's it. Yeah.
You know, it's good that you brought that up, because I was having a discussion a few weeks ago with Melinda about how directors these days loved, including George Lucas and J.J. Abrams, they love to use the word MacGuffin to describe, you know, everything in a movie. Like George Lucas is like, oh, well, you know, the Ark of the Covenant's the MacGuffin of the Indiana Jones film. And J.J. Abrams is like, oh, well, you know, Luke Skywalker and the map is the MacGuffin and the Force Awakens. They use it all the time, and they all use it wrong, because Hitchcock created the term MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is something in the plot that you think is going to be the plot, and then turns out not to be the plot. Yeah. So, like in Psycho, the money that Janet Leigh steals at the beginning of the film from her own bank, we think it's going to be a bank heist story. And then it turns out that no, the first hotel she checks into, the guy at the hotel murders her in the shower, doesn't even know she has money, and then dumps her in the swamp with her whole car, with the money in the trunk, the boot. So that's the MacGuffin, is the money. So like Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark isn't a MacGuffin because it literally is the plot, right? But in this movie, like Tony just pointed out, this may be, and I'm probably wrong, but I'd like to think that this is the only movie where the MacGuffin is a bullet-riddled corpse in barbed wire. Like that would be, you know.
I mean, it kind of had something to do with it. They were attempting to escape. I mean, that's part of the whole plot of the movie, is we are to escape. However, it got twisted of, now we don't want to just escape. We want to win this actual soccer match.
Right.
And every time I say soccer, I'm looking at Tony over here. I'm going to eyeball him every time.
The German contingent comes in to investigate, and Max von Sydow, who plays one of the officers who has an acute interest in football, he sees Michael Caine's character of Colby coaching some of the guys playing the game. And I've cut together a little sequence to show you how this all kind of comes about.
Please, sir, can I have my ball back?
You play matches?
We even play internationals.
Internationals?
Yeah. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales.
Oh, you call that international? Would be international if you played against Germany.
We'd murder you.
We'd murder you. He
Can
is.
I just say, having Max von Sydow and Michael Caine in the same movie is just
With Sylvester Stallone.
well. Let's. Ooh, Melinda's on. Yes, with Sylvester Stallone.
Red dot on your head right now.
That is like the greatest trio of all time. Oh God!
But you were saying about Sydow and Caine, sir.
Yeah, but yes, it's just having those two there. I mean, and when I saw this movie, it was like, I believe it was my first time seeing those two.
Right.
And I didn't realize that later I would watch Flash Gordon and I would go, hey, that guy, I've seen him. And I've always remember seeing people in other movies, but I just can't, it takes me a while to figure out who they're from. And I'm watching that. And then seeing Michael Caine, I can't think of all the movies that I've seen Michael Caine in, you know, as recent as, you know, being Alfred in Batman series. I mean, it was great, but yeah, those are two, especially at that time, those are two titans of acting right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just only recently, like a year or two ago, lost Max von Sydow. So or it wasn't this year, was it?
No, it was a little bit ago, but it was fairly recent.
Yeah.
And a real quick bit of trivia, well, not exactly trivia, but the director of Flash Gordon that directed Max von Sydow is Mike Hodges. He also directed Michael Caine in the classic Get Carter. He passed away this week. So
oh wow,
Mike Hodges, the director of Flash Gordon.
And then Sly would go on to remake Get Carter.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, with Michael Caine. It's the what do they call that Kevin Bacon thing?
And apparently,
thin, Riggs. This is very thin. Is anorexic.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
But apparently, during the movie, Michael Caine and Sylvester Stallone did not exactly get along because Melinda, please cover your ears. Sylvester Stallone was kind of an ass during the filming of this movie. Some of it was him being an ass, but some of it he was also writing Rocky III, and he was trying to do some other things. He would, you know, fly away for the weekend on his private jet when the shooting was done and just come back whenever. And he was very adamant about, don't call me unless you are ready to shoot my scene right now. And then he would show up. So he was a little, he was on that Rocky high, you know.
And that was the same year he would do First Blood, which
First Blood's coming out. I mean, he's swelling up, but he actually lost. I want to say he lost like a whole bunch of weight from the Rocky movie because he didn't want the character to look too buff.
Right.
Being a POW.
Right.
Like, how are you swole when you're supposed to be like barely eating food?
And yet he still looks.
Yeah, still.
I'd be very interested to know which he filmed. I know they both came out in 81, this film and First Blood, but which one was filmed first? Because although he's still very muscular, he's a lot thinner in this film. Yeah. You can see that straight from the off compared to his performance in Rocky, compared to his performance in Rambo. He's a lot more kind of slender looking. But aside from don't hate the player, hate the game. What I will say, Melinda, while you're here in the chat, and I was watching this going, man, this is one of those films that reminds me of actually. So Clement said he was a bit of an ass. I actually think his character's a bit of an ass in this as well.
Yeah.
However, he back in the day, he was a really handsome man.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people kind of remember him for the funny voice and, you know, the drooping eye and lip, but it was like, he was a very, very handsome man. You know, not up there with MasterSun42, but getting close.
I will say that one of the treats of this movie for me is seeing some of the best British battle dress in a film. And when Melinda and I first watched this, we'd both never seen it before. We watched it together about a year or two ago. I got it on the Warner Archive Blu-ray. And when he came in, and you'll see a clip from this in a minute, everybody, but when he comes into the escape committee's hut to talk about his escape plan, his idea, he's wearing traditional British Army battle dress. I've never seen someone who makes that, like, I love battle dress, why I'm wearing it for this episode, but man, he makes it look good. Like, I've never seen another actor look better in that battle dress than him. I was just like, holy crap, the dude.
And what you're witnessing now is the required by Melinda to make him say something very nice about Sylvester Stallone. Keep the peace, Michael. I'm with you. You got to do what you got to do.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I think that's a really good stepping off point for they don't establish anywhere in the film through a title card or anything what year this is actually set. I saw someone in the chat earlier say, wasn't Sylvester Stallone playing a Canadian? No, he was an American. The character was an American. What was that?
I heard Melinda's yelling at
Melinda just yelled down the stairs saying, Michael likes Stallone all on his own or something. I don't know. I'm not saying that Melinda's the only person that loves Stallone. What MasterSun was saying, Melinda, clearly you're listening, is that
don't get me in trouble.
Is that you know, you want Stallone's praises sung, and I get that. If Kylie was in this movie, I would be defensive and protective. So there you go.
Look, I love Stallone. He was my childhood hero. I wanted to grow up to be muscular and Italian, but unfortunately, I got to be bald and Australian.
Close enough.
They don't establish in this film what year it is set in. So the Sylvester Stallone character, he's not playing a Canadian, he's playing an American who joined the Canadian forces. That's why, and he is the only American that I've seen wear a beret really well.
Yeah.
Because like the entire US military don't know how to wear a rocker beret well. He obviously had a British advisor or something on that.
We'll keep it up. We are going to start the war again. It's going to happen, and somehow we're going to fight. It's going to go.
So I want to say I think this film is set in 1941, possibly 1942. The reason being, otherwise, an American, well, and perhaps he could have been a fighter pilot or something, but he wouldn't have been American military.
Right.
Yep.
In a prisoner of war camp. That's also why I think Pele, his character, do they say he's from Trinidad?
Trinidad.
Yes, yep. Trinidad.
Even though the title card at the end, and the closing credits that goes through the players, it says Pele, Brazil. Because Brazil had not engaged in World War II by 1941. So,
yep, I think that's very accurate. It's got to be 41, 42, somewhere in there, because not only that, you've got RAF officers wearing the later battle dress rather than the dress uniform. So that's just me being a uniform nerd. All right, moving on. Max von Sydow's character then approaches Colby ostensibly the next day. He's watching him coach the soccer players, and they have a little conversation, which I have grabbed a few bits from.
How would you like to play a game against a team from the Wehrmacht? A team from the army base nearby?
Play football. I can hardly stand up.
Boots can be supplied.
I mean, proper gear, shirts, shorts. I'd want special conditions, special rations. The team would have to live together, eat together. I'd want meat, fresh vegetables, eggs.
Max von Sydow really wants to have a football match. He wants to have a game between German Wehrmacht and British players. And one of the bits that you didn't see in there, everybody, is that Michael Caine's character of Colby says, I don't want it to be officers versus officers. I want to be able to go over to the enlisted man side of the camp and pick out. I want to literally have everybody, try out, and I want to pick the best people. And then I need you to feed them the way you would feed your own athletes, so that we have a fair chance. And he's like, I will see what I can do. And he goes off to, do his thing. Now in the background, Hatch, who is played by Stallone, Hatch has been seen playing football, but he's also been seen timing the German guards. He's been watching them at night as the German commandant's mistress or wife or whoever it is leaves every night, when he has the time to see her in a staff car. He's planning an escape. So he finally goes to the escape committee to give them his plan of escape, which involves getting out through the lavatory and showers. And so here's a cobbled together bit of his plan.
But they know we're inside having a shower. So they come inside, lean against the door, have a smoke if they can bum one. And I think if somebody went missing, they wouldn't report it.
How are you going to get out of the wash house?
There's a vent in the shower room. It leads into a storeroom or something. Now I could get onto the roof, go underneath the barbed wire, and drop into the German compound.
Naked.
Naked. Nice.
That part was for Melinda.
Yeah,
She had a whole image in her head. She was like, naked.
I hope everybody noticed how smart Stallone looked in that uniform, by the way. Just look.
It was tailored for him. It had to be.
Oh, sure.
They basically painted that on him.
I'm sure that was in his contract.
That's got to be one of his best ever on-screen costumes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm biased. Okay, where are we? Then there's this other little bit of the escape plan that is not foreseen by the characters, because the escape committee gets the idea that because Colby, Michael Caine, wants to have this football match, they naturally see it as an opportunity to get the entire football team to escape. So they want him to use that as an escape plan escape scheme rather than an actual football match. And Colby's not real happy about that.
Welcome aboard.
What about me?
Get out there.
What about me?
Get out there and play. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about your escape, Colby. The whole team, if possible.
I am not interested in getting them killed.
Are you afraid to try?
Your escaping is just some bloody upper-crust game.
He ain't happy with the whole don't turn my thing into your thing. Like I'm here to just help out these guys, that's supposed to boost morale. That was Max von Sydow's argument. It'll boost morale between our two nationalities and all that kind of stuff. But they're like, no, we want you to use this as an escape opportunity. Now in the background, Stallone has been trying to get on the football team, but Stallone doesn't know anything about the escape committee's want to make the football team an escape plan. He was an American football player, and he's just trying to get on a team and do something in the prisoner of war camp while he waits for them to either approve or disapprove of his escape plan that he just proposed. Have I got all that straight so far? Okay.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. How are we all feeling about this movie at this point in the runtime, guys?
Somewhat convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a lot of buildup. I mean, you can see that there's this intricate piece going, and watching it when I was a kid was different than definitely than watching it now. Watching it now, especially after being in the military, I'm looking at, okay, he's talking to and they even called it out in the movie. He's talking to a German officer by himself. And they even asked him later, what did you talk about? You know, you look like you were talking to the enemy. And what were, all this, are you, conspiring with the enemy kind of thing? I think it was more of they were playing with him more than they were actually serious. But when he's doing this, he has to be careful because you can't be seen as sympathizing with the enemy or anything like that. The enemy will always try to make a propaganda piece out of it, which they eventually wind up doing. Right. And you can see that now. You can see that in like American politics. One side will do something, and then the other side will, give you 50% of the story to make it fit what they say. Cat 1, I saw a cat. 2, and then on the other side, they'll do the exact same thing. So it's all propaganda to make one side look better than the other. But he's just trying to keep morale up. He wants, if you're in a prisoner of war camp, there's nothing to do. And there's no TV, no nothing. Playing soccer is great for you to go and run around, get some exercise, and just keep morale up. But as an officer, and I imagine it's the same as is in the UK as is for America, we're required to attempt to escape. If I'm ever captured, you must attempt to escape and aid others in their attempt to escape. Right. So if you don't try it, it could be seen as, you're not doing your duty. Yep. However, it would be a stretch because he could say, I was keeping morale up, and that was part of my duty as an officer or something. But I that's how I saw it then. I'm sitting there watching the movie again. I'm going, ooh, you're pushing. But then when he turns and asks him, we need the same food, we need the same everything, all these things. You ask for your buddy's stuff. If you're getting something, you got to ask for everybody to try to get more people to get it, get stuff, and everybody benefits as much to the max extent possible.
So you would agree with the escape committee's want to turn this opportunity into an escape?
100%. I agree with all the three main, different stories. You got the escape committee, Michael Caine's character, and you got Sylvester Stallone's character, all trying to do kind of three different things. I agree with every one of them on what they were doing and why. So if I had to make a decision on you have to choose one of the three, it would be hard for me to make that decision because they're all equally viable.
Right. Scuba Pete says the escape committee said his plan was a bit rocky.
I've got to respectfully disagree here, MasterSun42.
He is disagreeing with me?
Okay. By this point in the film, and don't get me wrong, we were chatting earlier. To everyone in the chat, I view this film much in the same way Michael views Ninja 3: The Domination. It's a guilty pleasure, but I wholly agree that it is got a flawed story, some strange casting decisions. I actually don't think Michael Caine really wants to be there that much. If you notice, like I'm not saying that Michael Caine looks fat, all right? But when they're actually later when they're playing soccer, he's the only one that's got a beer belly, and it's like you're supposed to be in a prisoner of war camp, and you look. You're not shy of a few rations there. So, but by this point in the film, I'm kind of I paused the film for a moment when I rewatched it yesterday because I was like, it's as though they need conflict in the story, to keep the audience engaged. So that's why everyone's kind of got a different motivation, but I don't necessarily think that they fleshed out those motivations. But for a long time leading up to it, I can't understand why Stallone's character even wants to be on he wants it so badly. And it's like, if he had known from the start it's because they're trying to escape, then I would get it. But it's like, he wants to be out through the wire in 2 weeks, but then he's desperate to join this team at the same time. It's like, why?
Right.
When Michael Caine's character is told about the escape, I think they come up with a relatively good excuse for him to be against it, which I don't want to get the men killed. But he's a captain in this film. He wears 3 pips on his barrel dress. He should be all in on that escape. If not, he would be reprimanded.
Right.
It's not like, oh, okay, you've disagreed with the senior officer and the escape officer. All right, we've disagreed. You just go off and do your own thing. It wouldn't. I don't think it would work that way. But I can ride right past that because of Stallone wearing that beret and that barrel dress. And as much as I don't think, when I say I don't think Michael Caine didn't want to be there. I think he probably wanted to be there because he probably got a bit of a buzz out of being able to hang around with Pele and Bobby Moore, who was one of the England players who won the World Cup in 1966. But it's he didn't give it his all. He's like, I'm here for the money on this one. I'll coast through this one.
So you're
he
saying
did actually say he was there to mingle with Pele and some of the other players. Yeah, that was one of his main motivations for making that movie.
It was for Michael Caine. It was a jolly boys outing, as they say in England.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't as mercenary in intention as when he did Jaws: The Revenge. It was just more of a this looks like this might be fun to hang out with Pele and John Huston and mingle with Max Vaughn
and Tony, did you notice that at the beginning when Sylvester Stallone came into the camp to the dorm, I'll say, of the committee, how they said, "Oh, wait a minute, we're talking right now," and they pushed him back out. I found that rather amusing. I laughed because all the times when I was in and doing things, if we're talking with Americans, we're talking secret U.S. only, and then a British guy, an Australian guy who's our friends will walk in. We're like, "Oh, hey, we're talking about some stuff that we can't necessarily tell you right now," even though that it's pretty much there's no reason why we can't other than the rules. And then I'm like, oh, so the first time ever, the Americans got like the Heisman of you get out and you wait till we come and get you. It was like, man, if they only knew in like 45 years from now, we're going to flip that script.
That's factually not true, Clemens. I used to get invited into American operations rooms.
You do when we're talking non-secret U.S. only. When we talk about Five Eyes stuff, you would come in.
The most hilarious thing, though, I remember that little scene, and it's like still and okay, he's a Canadian soldier in this, all right, but whatever. They're like, step out for a moment, because we're talking top secret, and then the few seconds he's outside the door, they talk about some plan where a guy wants to pole vault over the fence, and they laugh at it and then go, okay, you can come in now.
Come in now. Yes.
Why didn't you just cut that whole bit from the film and just have him come in and tell his story?
Yeah, that was weird. That was really
it was very weird.
Yeah.
It was very weird.
And I think the implication is that he's an American volunteer with the Canadian forces, and that's how he got in. Because they keep referring to him, I think, a few other times throughout the film as the American. So,
and I thought for a while they thought he was like possibly like an infiltrator, like Stala. I forgot whatever the name of that movie was, where he could actually be a German guy. I was thinking, was he the new guy? Did he just get there and everything?
I mean, he said he was with the British Army since Dieppe.
Yeah. So but it was just weird.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. That was the whole scene was really weird in how they treated him, and I guess because he's the American. They're going to treat him differently, but usually the oddity like that would actually be everybody would want that person around. I don't know. It just seems weird.
Yeah. Shockwave75, thank you for the super chat. He says, Michael Caine's character just wanting to play soccer reminds me of Alec Guinness just wanting to build a bridge. Well, fortunately, in this case, Michael Caine has an earlier moment that kind of turns him around a little bit, which we're about to talk about. He doesn't become so obsessive like Alec Guinness's character by the end. Hatch, is still watching the showers and the lavatory, and he's been timing the guards. And suddenly one morning he comes out and he notices the guards are not acting the way they normally would. The timing pattern is completely thrown off now, which means his escape is virtually scrubbed unless he finds out what's going on. And, well, here's what he finds out.
Look, they switched the guards on me. Those goons are patrolling the outside of the wash house like they're supposed to.
Yes, I know.
What do you mean you know?
I know. Hans and Anton have been switched to watch over the football team.
You and your team wrecked my escape.
How?
I was going through the wash hut, but only if those 2 goons were on duty. Now those 2 goons have been transferred to you. So the only way out of here is by being on that team.
I won't be responsible for your death. You get yourself shot.
That's my choice, isn't it?
Okay.
Now I've had to cut that sequence up a bit. There's more dialogue in there and everything like that, but because of all of the demands that or requirements, I should say, that Colby made of Sadow's, I need better food, I need better gear, I need all of these guys to live in the same hut, I need them to have showering privileges and all kinds of stuff. He has thrown off the normal course of the day in the prison camp. So now Hatch has decided, I've got to get into this football group somehow, because that's the only way I'm going to get out of the camp and then make my way out, because I've got papers and everything that have date limitations on them. So he's trying to then he just what you don't see in that scene, because I cut it out, is he just kind of barges his way into the new hut and says, I'm going to be your trainer. I'm going to be the guy that takes care of the injuries and puts ice packs on, twisted ankles and stuff. And he's like, we don't need you. And he's like, no, you do. And then they have this conversation outside where he convinces him, look, you totally screwed up an approved escape plan with all this BS. So you're going to help me. Michael Caine's like, all right.
So I just thought of something that worked with me. What if that scene where he saw the guards and screwed up everything, then they would have showed all the scenes of him trying to get on the football team. I did that for your benefit, Tony. One time. Now, all those times of them trying to get on the team, and then he has this thing with the hut, that probably would have made a little bit more sense of why he was trying to get on the team. Right. And he just didn't want to tell him exactly the reason, because a lot of times, if I'm not mistaken, especially in World War II, the escape committee, a lot of those would know only like half the committee would know about certain escapes, half would know about another in case they were interrogated. So maybe he didn't want to let Michael Caine's character know that he was escaping, what was the whole reason. That would have probably made more sense if depending on if it was cut a little differently.
I mean, from this, and this is no sarcasm, from this, I am truly seeing on my spleen at some point, Escape to Victory, the MasterSun42 edit, where you fan edit the whole thing together. And then all the comments underneath going, yeah, it really clears up a lot of things. The continuity and the flow is so much better.
And every time they say football, I dub it with somebody saying soccer. Soccer.
Oh, man. So Hatch. Oh my God.
Does he know this? Does he know what he's doing?
No, I did not. I'm just I don't set up my co-hosts. If I'm the escape committee, I tell both you guys all the escape plans. Okay, I don't know. Hatch takes his responsibility seriously, but he's also an American, and Colby makes mention a few times of how Hatch never stops running his mouth. He's always very upbeat, very chatty, and so here's a moment where they get their uniforms and Hatch is really leaning into his trainer role.
So if there's anything wrong with any of you guys, tell me now, not later, okay? Little inconveniences, say like anal bleeding, tuberculosis, growing tumors, little inconveniences like that, all right?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was like, I had coaches and first sergeants who act just like that.
Really?
Yes, 100%. first sergeants like to. Oh, I'm gonna get in trouble somehow. But a lot of times they like to repeat what the commander says, and it's just like we just said this. Even in email, they'll like forward the email that was sent out to everybody, and then they'll say have the same stuff, and then it's like, oh, also I want to further pile on to blah blah blah, and you're just like, okay, we get it. But I also understand he's trying to motivate, and that's the American way of doing it, and it's not necessarily the British way of doing it. I don't know. I've never been on a British soccer team, so I don't know what kind of motivational speeches there are. You know what? Yeah, that's it. I tried. You know, Michael, is it? I'm getting a little hot. Is it getting hot in here? Oh man, yeah. I think I'm getting a little warm. So I mean, see, you gotta be ready for some people every now and then. You want to try something, so.
Tony, I did not.
Saying, Michael,
I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this.
At the start of this, Michael did say that for the first episode of War Stories in 2023, MasterSun42 would be added to the intro. The hell he ain't.
Oh, man. Oh,
did you
God.
get that t-shirt made just for this?
I saw it and ordered it specifically for this. I don't probably ever wear it again except for like change oil in my car. But doggone it, it was worth it every dime. I actually was looking. In my defense, I was looking for one that said it's called football, and for it to be a British or Australian flag, but I couldn't find one. I was going to send it to you. But I couldn't
You're going to send it to me?
I was going to send it to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. How did you know I'd run out of toilet paper? So, guys, I'd like to ask you both a question. When you watch Stallone's performance in this film, like the clip you just showed, do you get the impression that he doesn't know what decade he's supposed to be in, even given the setting and the costumes and everything?
I tell you what, if I didn't know that this was filmed in 1981 and knew the actors, I swore this was like a 1960s at the latest, just the way it felt. But when I watch it now, I go, everybody's in 1980s except for Stallone, or everybody's in the 1940s except for Stallone, who I think he thinks it's probably like 84. He's in the future, and doing things. It's just how he is. I don't know, but it could be just because he's the only American and it's just sounding differently. But I get your point, Tony. He's definitely not the same.
Yeah, he's very much of his time. Like, regardless of what he's in, he's very much of his time.
He was probably thinking about his private jet flight that he was going to have that weekend to go back to Paris so he could hang out for a while.
I mean, I don't even know what he was thinking. I mean, he was just there, doing the thing, and it was a good movie. It's good. It's anyway, we can get back to the thing now. So
it's gonna be a long episode.
Well, I actually don't have many clips. We're actually up to the halfway mark with our clips, because once we get to the football thing, it becomes very straightforward. So it's
I mean, this does have a 3-act structure, because Act 2 is very much about this. Well, it's all Stallone. Stallone takes a trip to Paris and comes back, and yeah, okay,
yeah, it's which you will see I won't have pulled many clips from, because you've just described it as they get their uniforms. I just wanted to have this little moment here where they, it's the beginning of a number of montages in the film, which is appropriate that Stallone is in this film because it's a film with a lot of sports montages. So I can see why they wanted him in it. but they get their track suits essentially, and they take their first lap around the POW camp, and there's some cheers and jeers as they come out in these bright red suits, and Michael Caine has a wonderfully appropriate reaction to it all.
Take no notice, lads. They're only jealous. Who's a pretty boy, mate? Up yours.
Love it. Then as part of the montage, he's describing, because one of the things I forgot to mention is that Stallone recognizes Colby as a famous football player, and from before the war. So Colby naturally is wanting to coach them and make sure that they have the best chance of beating the Germans. So he's teaching them all these strategies. And there's this beautiful moment here that I just wanted to pull for everybody. It's one of my favorite parts of the film.
Always pass. Let the ball do the running for you. Don't try and run with it. You're in no condition to run for 90 minutes, I tell you. As they...
Give me this. Cool. After giving me ball, here I do these. Go. Easy.
I love that bit because Pele at that time was, and still is, was already a legend at that point. And so there's this beautiful moment there where, he's like, because he, as we all know, he played football, soccer. He played it like nobody else had ever played it. And so he's drawing what he literally can do on the football field. Like, he's just like, yeah, I'm not really going to worry about that. I can just go like this and I'll be done. And I love the fact that he has so much charisma in a film where he's not an actor and he's not even using his first language. And yet he's still able to, I feel he's able to sell his performance really credibly. All credit to him, and of course the direction of John Huston with him as well. So here comes the next bit, which is my favorite part of the film. Colby is not done building the team. And what he's trying to do is, as we saw from the scene with Max von Sydow, where he's like, I want better rations, I want, better equipment, I want this, I want that. He tells him, I want some of the best Polish football players from before the war, and I know you've got them. And there's this bit here, which personally for me, I just find it to be the most impactful part of the whole film.
How did they get here?
I insisted on having them. They're all great players.
You are a naive fool, Colby. Von Steiner has sent you 5 skeletons.
What about those poor bastards there?
Do we send them back to the labor camps? That's a very good question, Colby.
You guys want to get some water? Has anybody got any soap?
Yeah, I have. I got DDT as well.
All right. Come on, guys, get some water.
I had forgotten about that moment from the last time I watched it. So when I watched it this time, I was just like, oh yeah, this part. A lot of you who are in the chat know that in World War II, the Germans, they had concentration camps, but they also had really, really weird prejudices about different countries versus others. So it wasn't, while they treated the Jewish population the most horribly, as we know in the history books, they also had very weird prejudices about what Eastern European countries were populated with subhumans, this and that, and Poland was one of those countries. So they didn't put Polish soldiers in normal POW camps. They worked them to death. And so this was that moment where, for me, it was like the intentions of Colby versus the intentions of the escape committee were starting to fracture within the script, where I'm going, what does the escape committee care who he's bringing onto the team versus Colby? I could actually understand. I also couldn't understand it because I'm going, well, I'm glad he's not heartless and not sending him back, but that was a miscalculated move on his part because I thought he was just playing a game to see if he could boost morale by beating the Germans. So Colby's motivations have suddenly changed. They've taken a turn because they all agree in the next moment, because you see them gathering up soap and DDT and giving them food and doing all that kind of stuff. And they all the team agrees, no, we're not going to quit the game because we think these guys are a liability, and we're not going to send them back. We're going to see this through, and we're going to play out this game for the benefit of them as well. But oddly enough, Colby, who is against trying to escape, has now created a scenario that the escape committee points out to him has now mandated that you try to escape, because what will happen to these Polish guys after the game? They will be sent back to the labor camp where they will die. And I thought that would have been a really cool moment to bring into the script if the character motivations were somehow logical and consistently arrived at. But maybe I'm being too harsh, because maybe what they were trying to do was set up a quandary for Colby that then he has to, turn a corner and change as well. And maybe they just rode past it too quickly. Maybe if it had played out a little bit, it would have felt a little more. So maybe I'm just being too harsh. But what do you guys think?
It's just another one of those threads that you kind of pull on, which we find out later doesn't really go anywhere. What I think possibly would have made more sense for the escape committee would be if they were saying, if they were focused on getting British prisoners of war out or something like that, but they don't really. There's a lot of issues throughout this whole film with characters' motivations are not very well written, and this is another really good example of that. They chop and change, and yeah.
What do you think, MasterSun?
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. Like, what does it matter if these guys show up? They could be the towel boys for all you care. You don't want them to go back as much as possible. But if he's saying, I don't know about him guilting Michael Caine's character, because it's like, okay, say they have to go back to the labor camp. Well, if I hadn't got them here, they wouldn't have got good food for a little bit. They wouldn't have got some reprieve from the work for a little bit. So at a minimum, I at least helped him out and maybe had him survive a little longer.
Right.
So to kind of use that against him was kind of like, it's, as you say, thin, Riggs.
Yes.
Really thin.
And you brought it up, so.
This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. This is anorexic.
Now,
the sad part is Danny Glover is younger than me in that clip, and it does kind of mess with me.
Yeah, well, Danny Glover is also far better dressed than you are in that clip.
Oh my goodness! So you just we're doing clips now. We're doing clips.
See that, Clemens? See,
I don't see, your whole screen is blocked out for some reason. You must be doing something wrong.
103.4 million people watch the Super Bowl. 4 billion watch the World Cup.
Only because they're trying to figure out, why is this thing still going? These guys, are they athletes or actors? Because every time someone runs by another guy fast, he falls on the ground and has he's hurting because he stubbed his pinky toe or something. Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry. We decided to play contact sport without full body armor.
Oh, so now you want to talk about the sport that lets me know how intelligent you are. Let's just ram each other together and just hope for the best, and we'll be okay. Don't worry about any kind of protection. I can do this all day, Tony. Come on.
Does the name Hatch in this film, does it grate anybody else? I think it's a stupid character name.
Oh, it's very, very dumb.
I kept making puns in my head this last viewing. I was like, he's hatching an escape plan. Ooh, he's hatching a scheme. What is he going to hatch next? It
sounds like a nickname you'd call someone more than that their real last name.
Yeah.
Other than, I'm thinking Battlestar Galactica was that guy's name, Hatch.
Oh yeah, Richard Hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's the only person I've ever heard of that name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could call Stallone Apollo based on the Richard Hatch thing.
And Apollo Creed from Rocky.
Ooh.
Wow. This is thin, Riggs. This is very thin. This is anorexic.
Oh dear.
Oh,
we talked earlier about the Great Escape tropes that get dropped into this movie, and Hatch, the aforementioned, recently mentioned Hatch, has shown a little bit of a unexpected talent because he was a American football player. He shows a little bit of a talent for catching said ball, which will then lead into the next little bit of plot point here.
I think the Germans are going to have to go some to beat them.
You're an optimist.
What are you?
That's not bad, Hatch.
What's not bad?
Using your hands.
You've got feet, I've got hands.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, he doesn't have to just be the trainer. I can make him like the backup goalie. He can actually be, he can be the goalie. And they start trying to condition him to be a goalie. And in the background, the escape committee decides, and this is where the Great Escape trope comes in. We could really use somebody to get outside the fence and make contact with the French resistance to let them know that there's going to be a big game at the stadium, as and wherever they go for the event, and then they could hatch a scheme to
saw what you did there.
They could hatch a scheme to get the players out at halftime, but we've got to get someone out to do that, which is the only American in James Garner in Great Escape was an RAF. But the only American flyer in the Great Escape in the POW camp was Steve McQueen. So Steve McQueen is tasked with getting outside the wire, doing some reconnaissance, and then deliberately getting captured to come back, spend time in solitary, and then give them all the information they need for the big escape. They mirror that in this movie by asking Stallone to escape with his lavatory plan, get outside the wire, make contact with the French resistance, tell them about the big football match coming up, have them come up with a plan to get them out at halftime. And then he is going to come back by getting captured and then wait it out in solitary and then give them all the intelligence that he's acquired.
But did he know before that he was going to get captured again? Or was that the French guys plan once something had changed? I was trying to remember.
Good question, Tony.
I thought he didn't know that, and then they were coming to point and said, "Well, someone's got to tell him."
Right.
And they said, "You need to escape or get captured again." And then he was like, "Wait a minute, I just got here." And
I get the impression that there's possibly a deleted scene somewhere where
could be
where the French kind of having that conversation with him, but Michael, you don't happen to have a clip of the so when he is harboring with a female member of the French resistance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a clip of that conversation, do you?
I don't, as a matter of fact.
That's fine. That's fine. He the female member of he's obviously as Melinda says, he's dreamy and he's being quite charming and asking her if she's got a husband. He's trying to figure out if there's a man around the house, and she's being very, very cold to him. But she's saying the reason is that when I harbor guys like you and I get to know about your parents and your families and your kids, and then during your escape you get killed, then it's really traumatic for me.
Mm-hmm.
And Stallone gives this speech about doesn't know his parents. No kids. I don't even have any pets while he's sipping his tea. I don't even have any pets. And I was like, yeah, they really don't care much about this character, do they? This character was put into the film so they could put Stallone, Caine, and Von Sydow on the poster.
Yes.
and try and sell it to an American audience. If they wanted to sell this to an American audience, they could have just had Michael Caine and Max von Sydow called it Escape to Victory everywhere else, and then in America say, call the film It's Called Soccer, and then you would have run out and watched it.
Hatch essentially becomes Steve McQueen's Hilts in the beats of this story. The only difference being is, like Tony just mentioned, Hatch has this kind of watered down subplot with this French resistance woman that really doesn't go anywhere on screen, which is why I feel there's a lot of deleted material. But then at the very end, the two of them act like they fell in love or something, but you literally don't see anything like that. It's strange. So here's the moment where they tell Hatch what they want him to do.
We want you to contact the resistance for us.
What?
And arrange the escape of the football team.
And then Hatch gets out, and there is one bit of authentic reference to a lot of the British's brilliant escape protocols and strategies. There's this bit here where he's still hiding in the showers waiting for Pele, and they have to get past Pele before he feels safe, because they make everybody file out and then they count them to make sure that nobody's missing, and they use a dummy to ensure that the Germans aren't. And this is one of those things like Kingdom of Heaven, where anybody who doesn't know their history might watch this and think that's the moment that jumps the shark with historical believability or whatever. But like Kingdom of Heaven, it's moments like this that are actually the most accurate parts of the film, as far as what the British learned to do and tried out when they were POWs. So there's this bit right here.
Stay close to us.
Hi.
Totally real. Like that, they did that in various POW camps. The British came up with all kinds of things like that to fool the Germans into counting the right number of people. And they would come up with dummies, and they would have people race to one end of the line, and then once they got counted, they would duck down and race to the other end, because to the Germans, a lot of the British just kind of looked the same. They were taking advantage of that neglect, that apathy.
And the guy carrying that paper mache dummy, that's Bobby Moore, who was one of the players of the winning players of the 1966 World Cup. I love it. Everybody, if you're an English football fan, you like Bobby Moore.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that they call him Terry. It's like a real London name,
right?
Bobby Terry. He doesn't have many lines of dialogue. Most of his lines of dialogue are actually in the climactic soccer game,
Right.
and it's brilliant. I think the few lines of dialogue that he has are fantastic.
And this is when they tell him that, or maybe it may not be when they tell him he's going back, but it's when I can't remember everything I pulled, but this is when Hatch comes back into the prison camp. No, it's not. Whoops. Wrong clip. So anyway, I just forgot.
Stallone lost all of his hair. What did happen?
Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. All right, so we're now at the point where they all go to the big game. The Germans are there. But the French are filling the stands. There are a lot of German officers in the stands. They forced the officers from the escape committee to show up to represent Britain, which I found pretty funny. They're like, I'm not going to represent Britain. And they're like, well, you're going to be there, because the British escape committee knows this is all a propaganda event. They don't want to contribute to it at all. They have the first half of the game, and the Germans are riding roughshod over them thanks to a prejudicial referee who is calling out every foul possible, not calling fouls on the Germans. There's one German player who is kind of like the big shot on the field, and he becomes this kind of nemesis to Stallone, because every kick the guy makes gets past Stallone's goalkeeping. Oh, and there's one part I forgot. This is important to mention. Stallone is in the cooler, and that's because he escaped. And they know that they need to get him to the game. They can't leave him behind. And so the escape committee pretty much tells Colby, you got to do whatever you can to convince Max von Sydow to let Hatch go to the game. And he's like, why is that my problem? And they're like, because, you know, he's the liaison with the French resistance and all that kind of stuff. You got to get him there, whatever. And they're like, okay. And so they go to the main goalie, the first pick goalie.
Yeah.
And they're like, look, we've told the Germans that the reason that we got to get Hatch out of the clink is because you broke your arm. So grit your teeth.
See, I'd be like, no, ho. I'd be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I broke my arm. You could have said I sprained my arm. I twisted my ankle.
Right.
You could have said a whole lot of things, but so now I got to do this to support your lie.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Could you imagine though if when Michael Caine's having that conversation with the German officer initially, and let's say he's thinking on his feet, and the first thing he blurts out is he's fractured his skull. It could have been a lot worse.
Right.
But yeah, I would have gone with like he broke his big toe or something.
Yeah. Christopher, this movie's 1981. Hogan's Heroes was in the 60s.
Yeah.
So just letting you know.
And also, and Dr. Coffin Nail says, why are we reviewing a 41-year-old sports film? Well, because it's set during World War II, and this is war stories.
This film is filled with World War II German soldiers and POW camps.
Yep.
And uniforms, as Michael loves to point out.
Yeah, and the fact that it's 41 years old is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it's actually different than any war stories ever done, because they've always been about combat, per se. But this is part of the war, a POW and escape from POW camps.
Yeah. Dr. Coffin Nails, I think you really need to tighten up your sphincter a little bit, because there are going to be some black and white movies in here eventually.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be some really old films. There are going to be films that might not be old, but they're about events that are going to be centuries, if not a few millennia old at some point. Like, this is war stories that take place during la guerre, like the war. So, just be ready. He's not gonna make it. Okay. They're doing the first half, and all of the major sports tropes are in there. Like, I wanted to limit the amount of sports footage that I played to the second half, because a lot of these shots are going to end up looking the same. Plus, there's a lot of music and score over it, and so I just wanted to kind of as much as I appreciate guys like Pele and things like that, I'm from that geeky side of the population that's like, once you've seen a ball get thrown around or kicked a few times, you've kind of seen it. And not to offend anyone. Sorry, Master Son. I'm not trying to
I'm just saying that bicycle kick, I could never. I could recreate a whole lot of stuff, but that bicycle kick I could never recreate.
And let me tell you, that is the standout moment that I have documented here. Yes, I'm not that sport blind. Okay? They get to the halftime, and they know that
real quick, Michael.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think of the costumes in that? And I'm specifically talking about the players, because I think the costumes are stunning.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about their sports gear?
The two sports gear, two team outfits, yeah.
I was curious about the colors though.
Mm-hmm.
White, but then they had like red, white. I'm like, I didn't know what they were trying to, if they were trying to imitate the the UK, but there's like Norwegian guys there. I think there was a Denmark guy there.
Yeah, look, it's that's the colours of the English. So England normally wear a white shirt, blue shorts with 3 red lions.
Okay.
So it's very much this is, as I said earlier, a fantasy wish fulfillment movie of England beating Germany in football. I know there's an American player, there's Danish, Norwegian, all that.
I got it. Yeah.
The audience they're aiming for are those guys who want to up the stakes of us winning the 1966 World Cup and go, what if we beat them during the war? It's like if they were to remake this film now, I actually think it would be set between Britain and Argentina, because ever since the Falklands War, that's become our new footballing rivalry, is England-Argentina. So
George Aiken says, "Oh, just wait till they do Carry On Up the Khyber." I can't wait to do our first war comedy. That'll be great. Or did we already do one, Tony?
I don't think we've done a comedy. No.
Okay. All right. Well, then I look forward to that.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yep. So they get to halftime, and at that point it's 4-1 Germany, because the refs have been prejudicial. The Germans have been cheating and fouling everybody. The British have been, they've been dogging the British the whole time with the bad calls and the abuse and everything, taking as many corner kicks as they can and foul shots and everything. But for some reason, right at the very end of the buzzer, the British score a goal, and the morale is up, and the whole crowd erupts because it's not Germany scoring at that point. And the French are happy, and everybody's happy except the Germans in the stands. So they go back into the locker room, the changing room. And this is where the French resistance have been digging underneath the stadium, and they're ready to open up a hole underneath the sauna, or the spa bath, to bring them out at halftime, so that nobody's the wiser. Well, their morale is high at that point, even though Pele's been injured and taken out of the first half of the game, and even though another guy is literally on a stretcher from being fouled by one of the Germans. They've decided that, no, we're feeling pretty good about this, except Hatch. And it takes a little bit of convincing.
Salut! Vite! You mean you go back and play the second half?
Well, I'll tell you. Let's move. We only got a few minutes.
Yes, but we can win this.
You can't win with me in the goal.
Of course we can. He's not a bad goalie, is he?
What the hell's the matter with you guys? You want to go back to prison?
If you go, we've all got to go with you. We can't go back without a goalie.
That game means a lot to us. You know that. Hart, if we run now, we lose more than a game. Please, Hart.
It's great acting by Caine and Pele. I mean, Pele, for somebody who's, again, not an actor and English is not his first language, he's doing a really good job.
He's very, very sincere.
Yeah. But it is a weird twist, because it's like, I thought that Colby's whole thing at this point was to get those Polish guys out to safety so they wouldn't have to go back to the labor camp. And suddenly a few of his guys are like, we can win. And he's like, oh my God, we can, let's go back. And I'm going, blah, 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 blah. Like I'm having a hard time figuring that one out.
If I was Hatch and I go, the refs are cheating, we're down by 3. Screw that game. We're out of here. We're going. Period. I'm like, no, we can't win. We are getting our butts whipped out there. They're cheating. There's no way. We are set to lose before the game even started. Let's go. That's how we win. We don't show back up, and they're like, what happened? And they're like, yeah, we were playing bad. Later, when we all, after the war, we come back, yeah, we were purposely playing bad, just so the Germans would get all high and they get all excited and forget about it. And the whole thing was about escaping. We weren't trying to win that game. No. They did, but just like you said, the whole point was to get these guys, the other guys out, and then now you just completely screw that. We're out. And then I guess I read somewhere that said this is where there was a plot hole, because when they came back out and the escape committee saw them, they were like, "What are you doing out here?"
Right.
Even though the escape committee didn't know that they were supposed to escape during halftime. They never got that word back. They just knew they were supposed to escape.
Right.
The only reason they know is right at the start of the game, the female French resistance lady, her son runs out onto the pitch with a small bunch of flowers, gives it to Hatch, and says, "Hatch, Hatch, half time." Which so then the soccer players know half time. They're the only people who know.
Yeah.
Right.
So so 100% that's a plot hole.
Yeah. It's that whole bit with Michael Caine. Once again, he went from I just want to play a soccer game and I don't want to escape to I brought these Polish guys on board who are going to die in a labor camp if they don't escape. So now I got to commit myself to escape. To oh wait, we think we can get 4 more points and win before the next half is over, even though we've had our asses handed to us. He's forgotten about the Polish guys and their fate at that point. So it is very just like what is going on with Colby's motivation here. Now, apart from that,
rumor has it that Ryan Johnson was a script consultant on this.
Escape from subverted expectations to victory. Yeah.
I don't remember which one of your RetroBlasting videos it's in, but there's that clip of J.J. Abrams going, they get to the next thing and mystery box, and you get to the next thing and mystery box. That was the thought process of the people. It's like we just need to get to a scene where the Allied players beat the Germans in France. That's however we get there. Don't put too much effort into it. Yeah.
And you know what? One of the things I do respect about Stallone as a filmmaker is that I can't see him ever sitting around talking about like waxing poetic about mystery boxes. Like every film he's ever done has just been very authentic and straightforward. And even if it turned out badly, like at least it's not, up its own rear end with, misdefined MacGuffins and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
As I see Melinda's shadow in his scene right there with the gun, saying, "You better say something else nice."
We were talking a second ago about the beyond human abilities of Pele. I wanted to capture this moment, not just from Pele's amazing athletics, but also, especially given that Pele had retired at this point and was still able to do all this stuff, but also the fact that from a filmmaking perspective, there's something I want to point out. This is the kind of, in the second half of the game, it's another montage where suddenly they feel like they figured out the Germans' strategy, and so now they feel like they can really make headway with scoring, which they do. They come back from behind and they score these 3 points to tie up, and Pele scores that last crucial goal. But the lavish filming of the football match is worth noting, which culminates here in Pele's kick. I love it that Sadow's character is just he cares about football more than he cares about the German army and all the politics. And so
that is probably my favorite moment of the whole film. When that character stands up and starts clapping, and it's like, the other Nazis around him are like, okay,
We will kill you for this.
This guy's getting hung when we get back.
Was ist das? What are you doing? Yeah. I gotta change my angle. I didn't realize that when I go into the microphone that I just suddenly look like this horrible wraith. I love how he loses himself in the game, because he clearly loves the game more than anything else, and it's that human moment. At the same time, though, the other filmmaking part of this that I loved, and this was filmed in 80, released in 81, so I don't know for a fact if they were doing this in Hong Kong cinema at this point. I know they were doing amazing martial arts films, but I do know that in the mid-80s, when Jackie Chan started coming into prominence with movies like Police Story, and he would do these amazing stunts, they would show them like 3 or 4 times from different angles.
Yeah.
So if anybody knows of a pre-1981 Asian martial arts film that did that, let me know. But this is the earliest example of somebody doing something incredible in a film, an athletic move like that is repeated 3 or 4 times for the benefit of the audience to see it, and see how it was done from one amazing athlete. Like Pele is the Jackie Chan of this film, and so the things he's able to do are pretty incredible.
And for those of you who don't follow football and aren't familiar with Pele, I have no idea how many takes they took of that, but I imagine if they filmed, let's say 10 takes, that he scored that goal all 10 times. If it was set up, obviously he hasn't actually. If you're trying to film it, the other players aren't going to try and tackle you or whatever. So, he was an amazing athlete.
Yeah, it was incredible. Jonas, thank you so much for the very kind super chat. He says, Merry Xmas to you guys and a Happy New Year. And to you as well. Thank you. Timothy Ward says, so Stallone saved us from the Russians in Rocky. He saved us from the North Vietnamese in Rambo, and he saved us from the Germans in Escape to Victory. It's true. He's the John Wayne of our time. John Wayne fought in every war, on every continent, in every era.
Hold on a second. I don't know why that just popped in my head. Was Max von Sydow, was he in Judge Dredd?
Yes. He was in what was it? He was in Judge Dredd. I want to say he was like a back part. I thought he was one of the main judges.
Like
on
a high counselor or something?
I think. Now I gotta look it up. But
wow.
Oh,
yeah.
He's on the move.
Stallone didn't save us from Roy Scheider. Rob Schneider. What did I say? Roy? That guy's in Jaws. Oh my God.
It's okay. It's okay, Tony. A lot of people get those two confused when they say it the first time.
Yeah, like John Hughes. I have noticed one time throughout this whole show, Michael, you've called it soccer, so I'll forgive you that one.
I have been trying to mix it up a little bit to please both people in the chat.
Here we go. He's been doing a good job of saying both. He's the middleman. He's okay, guys. Let's not fight.
I'm the guy with the American accent wearing the British outfit. I'm really trying here. Like I'm really. The last thing I want to do is tick off my British brothers in arms and all that stuff because I want you guys to like me.
Well, look, Michael, I actually think you don't have an accent at all. I think it's hard to pick. You don't have an accent. You're wearing battle dress. You've got Kylie posters in the background.
I'm just a hopeless man without an island.
Yeah. Your name should be Terry.
A little skinny, a little pale.
That's what's going to happen next. Starting January 1, anytime in the credits of a RetroBlasting video, it's just going to say Terry. No one's going to know. It's like, hey, everybody, I'm Terry here with RetroBlasting. People are going to be like, what the hell? And I'm just going to ride it out all the way through 2023.
You know what? And even Terry French, that sounds like a London gangster character that
Legit.
could be in it could have been in Lock, Stock and Two, Terry French.
Yeah, I'm like the third guy that's like protecting the craze, like talk to Terry. Yeah. I'd bring up 2 hammers and just go to town. I now I'm living in my head. Okay. The last bit here of the film, this is the last clip I have. This is, of course, the victory at this point, because even though they're surrounded by a stadium, the French and the locals are so excited that they're possibly going to win this game, that the energy is increasing in the stadium, and the French are starting to say victory, 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 and everyone's energy is getting up. And I don't know the rules of football as well as I should, Tony, so correct me on this, but even though they're still tied, they're at the buzzer with a foul. And it's the German nemesis of Stallone at this point, the guy that Stallone can't block the ball from in the first half. He's going to make a penalty kick. But if he doesn't make it, then somehow they've lost the game. Is that right?
No, so I think the score's 4-4 at the end.
Yeah.
But because it was like right at the final whistle, if he scores this, he wins. If he doesn't, it remains a draw.
I see. So the victory is that the Germans didn't win, not that the British won. Okay.
I watched that 3 times trying to figure out how I miscounted the goals.
Right.
And I had no idea.
And I was like going, wow, they're really happy about this tie. Like, but then I'm not at that point because I'm. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
That trope has come up a lot in the Rocky films.
Yep.
It's, the first Rocky film was not about him having to beat Apollo. The fact that he could go, the whole 13 rounds or whatever, and then decades later with Rocky Balboa, when he's this old guy comes again, he doesn't win that either.
Right.
But he proves that this old guy still got it, and So the score is 4-4. Basically, if the Germans score this penalty goal, they win. If they don't, the Allied POWs, who were never given a chance, actually went toe to toe, and it was a draw. So, which is like would be the moral victory.
Yeah, they were the more malnourished, the more mistreated. They were weak and skinnier and all that kind of stuff.
Well, except for Michael Caine.
Right. Yeah, makes you understand why the rest of the guys were kind of drawn and pale. So Michael Caine was stealing all their rations. And then go ahead. Sorry.
They said actually Stallone wanted to be the one to score the winning goal, but they said it's very ludicrous that a goalie would score a goal,
right?
And then you fast forward into the future. That's like a tactic. If you're down, you pull your goalie, and people go and actually use that to score. So that was one of the things that it was again all about Stallone, and you got to feed Stallone's ego.
Stallone has admitted that this was. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would say there were several things. They brought in a professional goalkeeper to teach him how to do it, and he brushed the guy off. And then he was trying to stop Pele's kick, and he dislocated his shoulder and broke his finger. And when he came back after some medical treatment a few weeks later, he was more receptive to instruction. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Not many people can say they got their finger broken from a kick from Pele, though.
I'm thinking that sounds like a good thing. I broke my finger. I was blocking one of Pele's kicks, and he broke my finger. Like, ooh, yeah, that's something.
I know that Pele's ill right now, but I hope he bounces back and lives a good long life as much as he can. But I hope that if Stallone outlives him ultimately, that Stallone will show us which finger it was, as a tribute to Pele, because that's cool. That's really cool. Now, as far as the poetic license or the artistic license, whatever you want to call it, poetic license is probably more appropriate. of the ending of this film goes is that when Stallone successfully blocks that penalty kick and it ends in a tie, the French audience erupts. They charge the stands. They tear down the barriers. The few Wehrmacht soldiers that are there certainly don't have enough ammo in those bolt-action rifles to start shooting everybody. They storm the field. They surround the players, and then they start giving the players their coats and hats and stuff as they exit the stadium. They basically swarm them, camouflage them, and they all leave together, which is the ultimate escape to victory. And here's a little bit of that moment. And they all run out together, and then they do this weird photo negative effect that was big in the 80s, and then the movie ends. And that is...
Yeah, that's some good coordination.
Photo negative effect at the end. I don't know what that was about, but so here's the thing. You just played that very, very brief clip there.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the second half of the game, through to that, with the music, this is why this film is, to me, what Ninja 3 The Domination is to Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I've been pointing out plot holes and things that I don't like all the way through, but still at the end, when Stallone's character saves that goal and the music erupts and the crowd rushes in, you just played that short clip and the hairs on my arm stood up and I got goosebumps.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah,
that's what a movie's supposed to do.
The Americans save the day. Oh, yeah.
Look, I'm actually okay with Sylvester Stallone saving the day because I adore Sylvester Stallone. Any other American, and this would be the worst film in history, but Stallone gets a pass.
Originally, Clint Eastwood was talked about in this role, and somebody else, I can't remember who the other person was, but one of them was Clint Eastwood, and that was kind of that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah,
he would have
looked back and see who the other person was.
He would have been in his 50s at that point, wouldn't he?
I thought, I don't know. Clint Eastwood's been 102 since I've seen him.
Well, you were in World War II with him, Clement. So,
yeah, I saw when he was born and everything. Yeah.
Well, I heard MasterSun was the one that got Clint Eastwood an agent. I mean, that's how far back it goes.
We'll keep going, huh?
He was there with him on the first day of filming Rawhide.
Roger Moore.
You got Roger Moore an agent too?
Oh, really? You're gonna do that? No, shut up. My back is hurting now dealing with you guys.
Well, gentlemen,
Roger Moore was supposed to be Colby at one point, but that was great.
Really?
It was good movie. I still like it. It was still a good movie.
Oh man, Roger Moore. What if it was Roger Moore and Clint Eastwood? Wow, Roger Moore, Clint Eastwood, and Pele. Yeah, he's irreplaceable. You can't swap him out with anybody. Oh man. Oh, that would have been good. It's kind of like how I found out that Die Hard was supposed to be Commando 2. Now I can't let that go.
Yeah.
I just want it to be the case, Anyway, that'll never happen. Oh well. I just want to see Arnold standing there being like, make fists with your toes. Like I just want him to kind of
I can't do an Arnold accent, but I would love to hear him say the line, "Yippee-ki-yay."
Oh, that would have been horrible. Oh my God.
Oh, that would have been so good. Instead of it being his wife, would have been Alyssa Milano grown up. She's got her new corporate job, and he's flown out there to, hang with her or whatever. And then he's like, Hans Grubered. Like that would be great. And instead of it just being like, him crawling around in air ducts because he'd never fit in one. So I don't know how they would have justified that. But, he gets to like it's like it's the Commando universe. So instead of picking up a phone booth like he did in the mall, he picks up like a fountain sculpture, just throws it on like 3 guys. Awesome. Awesome. Anyway, so back to the movie we are talking about, which is not The Lost Commando 2, but is Escape to Victory. How do you guys feel now that you've revisited this film? Where do you think it? Obviously, for Tony, it's a nostalgia bomb. What about you, MasterSun?
It's still good. I liked it. Like I said, the first time I saw it, I was a little kid, 81. Didn't really know much about soccer. Didn't know any of the actors in it except for Sylvester Stallone. But I watched it. I remember watching it with my mom, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. And then I watch it now, and now I can see different aspect of it, and I still think it's a pretty good movie, minus the plot holes. But I think it's a good one. It's like a classic now.
The part with the Polish guys genuinely affects me. Like every time that scene plays, it's genuinely like, because my whole background with World War II history is such that kind of stuff impacts me hard, and so it's like, so that's very effective. There's parts of this movie that are very effective, and of course it's John Huston, so it's very well filmed, and I think he gets good performances out of people. But since this is Tony's, like one of the movies that Tony grew up with, I'd like to give you the last word on this, Tony, for the night.
Well, this is very much a guilty pleasure film. Like I do thoroughly enjoy this film. It's one of those films that I probably sit down and watch every 5 years. It is, the cinematography is wonderful. I think the direction is really good. The costuming is gorgeous. Some real star power. It's just let down by being poorly written. But I think with such a fantastical premise, does it really matter?
I think it's sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, just to add to that, hold your thought. I think there might be deleted scenes that would pad out some of that.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I suppose my final thought is, if you want to see some of Michael Caine's best acting in his entire career, just watch the early scenes in this where he is showing his disdain for Sylvester Stallone. It's the best acting he's ever done because he wasn't acting.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this episode of War Stories. What is next on our docket, gentlemen?
We haven't discussed it yet.
We haven't talked nowhere near, so we got to figure that out.
I say that we find something that's like way different. Like find something that's like some war from maybe even the chronicled past, or that would be my vote. But we can talk about it in the background. I don't, obviously we don't have
let's talk about it in the background.
All definitely. Right. Yep. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed this. And Jason Anderson says next on the docket is the Michael French week off. If Melinda has her choice, that's true. All right, everybody. We will see you on the next War Stories. Want to thank my co-host for joining me again, and still wanting to be my friend. And we will talk to you soon. See you, everyone.
Can't believe you bought that T-shirt.
There.